the Matamoros cult killings. The dark truth behind the Narcosatanists. In the late 1980s, a sinister new cult emerged on the Texas-Mexico border, blending narcotics smuggling with dark Afro-Caribbean magic. Its leader was Adolfo de Jesús Constanzo, a Miami-born Cuban-American who had grown up steeped in Santeria and Palo Mayombe, dabbling in Haitian voodoo and apprenticed to sorcerers. By the mid-80s, Constanzo had moved to Mexico City, where he sold spells to wealthy clients, even cartel hitmen and crooked cops, sacrificing chickens, goats, and snakes in ceremonies to bring good fortune. He attracted a coterie of followers and lovers into his occult underworld, branding himself El Padrino, the Godfather, and eyeing a big score. He believed powerful magic was behind the success of the drug cartels, so he demanded partnership in the trade. When a cartel boss rebuffed him, several of that boss's relatives disappeared mysteriously. Undeterred, Constanzo secured new allies in the Texas-Mexico smuggling world, notably the Hernandez family, and began constructing an even darker, deadlier enterprise. He moved his headquarters to Rancho Santa Elena, an isolated ranch outside Matamoros, Tamaulipas, just miles from the Rio Grande. There he built a shrine around an enormous iron cauldron, or nganga, and gathered human bones, animal remains, skulls, coins, plants, and magic charms into it, all to summon spirits. Under Constanzo's direction, the cult raided graveyards for bones, but quickly concluded they needed the life force of living victims to supercharge the magics. They began abducting rivals, drug dealers, and even corrupt cops, bringing them to the desert ranch to be tortured and ritually slain. Cult members believed each sacrifice would bind the spirits of the dead to them, granting strength, abundance, and immunity from bullets and police. They drank the victim's blood and stewed brains in the nganga, wearing necklaces of bone and vertebrae as talismans of invulnerability. Constanzo convinced his followers that the greater the sacrifice, the greater the power, a twisted belief that would soon demand an American offering. Among Constanzo's inner circle was Sarah Maria Aldrade, a striking 6-foot-tall college student from Matamoros. In the 1980s, Sarah had crossed into Brownsville, Texas for school, where she was a straight-A physical education major and cheerleader at Texas Southmost College. Tall, poised, and fascinated by the occult, she knew the local Hernandez family, a wealthy smuggling clan, through class, and dating their younger scion, Elio Hernandez. Constanzo courted her. He nicknamed her La Madrina, or the Godmother, and initiated her into his blend of Santeria, Aztec ritual, and Palo Mayombe sorcery. Sarah became his devoted second-in-command, supervising the initiation ceremonies and overseeing rituals, while Constanzo managed the drug shipments. When Constanzo and his men set up at Santa Elena Ranch, Sarah was by his side, organizing cult rites as the ranch's makeshift temple. She later described herself as held prisoner by Constanzo during the final manhunt, but the evidence was clear. She stood as the cult's high priestess. In those final days before the killings, the cult's actions grew desperate. They consumed ever more vicious blood rituals, believing they would shield their trafficking runs from detection. To them, every victim was a sacred offering. Constanzo reportedly ordered his followers to find a white Anglo male for the next sacrifice, convinced that an all-American victim would bring exceptional power. Fate answered that demand on March 14, 1989, when 21-year-old Mark James Kilroy vanished in downtown Matamoros. Kilroy was a pre-med senior at the University of Texas at Austin on spring break with friends from Santa Fe, Texas. A devout Catholic honor student and accomplished athlete, Mark had crossed into Matamoros for a night of bars and dancing. Late that night, he lingered outside a club, chatting briefly with a local female contestant in a Miss Tan Line contest, before splitting off from his friends. By the time they rounded him up a few hours later, Mark was gone. His friends searched frantically, even crossing back to Brownsville and contacting police, but Mark had vanished from the streets. Initially, it was treated as just another missing person case. For days, the search went nowhere. Under hypnosis, one friend recalled a scarred Hispanic man in a plaid shirt talking to Mark, and the group even appeared on America's Most Wanted. Back in Texas, the Kilroys, Mark's parents, Jim and Helen, met with Texas officials and pried more help from Mexican authorities. Jim Kilroy was a U.S. customs agent, and he leveraged political connections. Within weeks, Texas senators and governors were demanding action. The case became an international affair. Mexican authorities, acutely aware of the tourism blow and political heat, secretly recruited every informant they could. Meanwhile, newspapers across the border ran sensational tales of cults and human sacrifice. The break in the case finally came on April 1st, 1989, in the desolate desert outside Matamoros. A Mexican federal checkpoint was raiding border traffic when a truck went barreling past without stopping. Instead of initiating a shootout, the officers tailed the vehicle stealthily. It led them back to Rancho Santa Elena. Crouched behind trees, the agents watched the driver go into one of the ranch's buildings. After he left, the police moved in and scoured the property. In the underbrush near the house, they uncovered eerie signs of occult crime: discarded candles and ritual tools, the gutted remains of animals, and spilled blood. Traces of marijuana were also found, evidence of trafficking. Instead of arresting immediately, the police backed off to gather more evidence. When they returned days later in force, they did not know the full scope of what lay buried there. Under armed guard, 4 suspects, all the associates of Constanzo, were rounded up, including Serafin El Sapo Hernandez Garcia and his uncle Elio Hernandez Rivera. To the stunned investigators, the men were oddly calm. One even smiled at being detained. Shortly thereafter, a shy ranch hand was questioned and shown a photo of Kilroy. He pointed a shaky finger at one of the house's shacks. "I saw him," the caretaker whispered. He led them out to a shallow grave nearby. Standing in the soft spring earth, the police watched as the men began to dig. Within minutes, their shovels hit bone. One by one, cult members were forced to disinter the bodies. 15 mutilated corpses emerged, all young men, all butchered. Faces were missing, organs removed, limbs hacked off. It was a mass grave of sheer horror. Among the bodies was Mark Kilroy. A quick dental check later confirmed it. The spring break student was dead. His legs had been sawed off, and a length of thick copper wire had been threaded down his spinal column so that after the flesh decomposed, the cultists could pull up the bones one by one. His brain had been removed and gruesomely boiled in the cult's cauldron. Cult members told interrogators that Constanzo had tortured Kilroy all night, beating and raping him, before marching him out into the field and finishing him with a single machete chop to the back of the head. Afterward, they had stolen his spine and skull, feeding them into the nganga, along with goat's blood, and the heads of chickens, and even a turtle. The men confessed that they drank the foul brew of blood and brains, believing it made them impervious. Some already wore necklaces of bone, convinced that each vertebra warded off danger. To Constanzo, an American brain was the ultimate prize. His followers said he believed the superior intelligence would magnify his dark power. Word of the discovery exploded. Journalists from around the world swarmed Matamoros. In an impromptu press conference, Mexican police paraded Serafin, Elio, and the other arrestees on the balcony of the Federal Judicial Police Headquarters. Over 250 cameras clicked as Elio Hernandez peeled down his shirt, revealing the ritual scars Constanzo had branded into his flesh. Arrow-like incisions burned in his skin to mark him as an executioner. The suspects faced blunt questions, often screaming answers at reporters. Elio revealed chilling details: that Constanzo indeed ordered them to lure an Anglo man for sacrifice, and that he himself had once cut off the head of a kidnapped victim, only to discover it was his own nephew. Across the border in Texas, Mark's death galvanized public attention. Reverend services and memorials filled churches in Brownsville and Santa Fe. Children tied yellow ribbons to trees. Jim and Helen Kilroy maintained an extraordinary grace. They told the press they held no anger and even prayed for the souls of their sons' killers. Emblazoned on national news, their story spurred conversations about border safety and drug violence. Within weeks, the Kilroys were in Washington, meeting President George H.W. Bush and National Drug Czar William Bennett. They pressed home a simple message: for every illicit drug sold, there was a human cost. Their tragic loss became a platform. The parents later formed a foundation to fight substance abuse, honoring Mark's dream of becoming a doctor by helping keep other kids safe. Bush himself called the case very sensitive and pledged support, a tacit pressure on Mexico to bring the culprits to justice. Meanwhile, even Mexico's government moved in mysterious ways. On television, it was shown how police brought a curandero, a folk healer, to Santa Elena to cleanse the site of evil. Agents sprinkled salt, prayed, and marked crosses, then doused Constanzo's wooden shack with gasoline and torched it. Officials half-whispered that the blaze was meant to drive the cult leader mad. The next morning, Constanzo indeed erupted in rage upon seeing news footage of his burning shrine. The cult's foundations were literally smoldering. But Constanzo himself was not at the ranch that day. On April 11th, the same day the bodies were dug up, he fled across the border to Brownsville and caught a flight to Mexico City with Sarah Aldrete and a few loyal followers. From there, he vanished into the capital's labyrinth. For a week, rumors swirled. Cult members allegedly stirred in Rio Grande Valley towns, or lay low in Miami. Mexican police raided one of his Mexico City apartments, finding porn and a small hidden altar, but no sign of Constanzo. Notably, they found the belongings of Sarah Aldrete scattered about, toys and clothes, leading them to believe, briefly, that he might have murdered his own lieutenant to cover tracks. U.S. agents issued wanted posters for Constanzo and Aldrete, indicting them on kidnapping and drug charges. But the manhunt was proving elusive. Finally, on May 6, 1989, it ended in a showdown worthy of a movie. Mexico City police, acting on a tip from a sorcerer in the police ranks, surrounded Constanzo's flat near Insurgentes Avenue. Behind the police lines, a black Mercedes pulled up. Inside stood Constanzo, and with him, Alvaro de Leon and fellow cultist Martin Quintana. When the raiding party entered, Constanzo immediately opened fire with a machine gun, spraying a hail of bullets through the hallway. He crumpled banknotes in his fist, tossing them into the corridor between bursts, lighting more cash on fire in the apartment so as not to let it fall into police hands. For 45 minutes, a battle raged in smoke and shadow. As their ammunition ran low and no escape remained, Constanzo grasped a final, macabre decision. He had de Leon kill himself and Quintana, rather than surrender. "Shoot us," he reportedly told them, "because nobody will have my money or my power." De Leon hesitated, and Constanzo smashed him with the butt of the Uzi, forcing the obedience. After the shots stopped, the police stormed in to find Constanzo and Quintana dead in a bedroom closet, bodies riddled with their own cult's bullets. Sarah Aldrete was on the floor outside, screaming that Constanzo was dead, yet still alive herself. She surrendered there amidst the chaos, the last of the cult's leaders caught. In the months that followed, Mexican courts closed the grim chapter. A total of 14 cult members faced trial. Leading perpetrators, Elio and Serafine Hernandez, who had kidnapped and murdered dozens, were sentenced to roughly 60 years in prison each. Sarah Aldrete received a similar sentence for her role. She will remain incarcerated in Mexico for life, though U.S. authorities still consider charging her in Mark Kilroy slaying if she ever is freed. Smaller participants either cooperated with prosecutors or served lesser terms, but all remained locked away. By 1993, most perpetrators were behind bars, their cult effectively dismantled. The aftermath of this nightmare rippled long after the news cameras left. In Matamoros, families of the murdered, mostly rival traffickers and unknown youth, buried their dead quietly, unwilling to relive the horror. In Texas and beyond, Mark Kilroy's memory became a symbol. His parents channeled their anguish into activism, educating students about the dangers of drugs and troubled towns. Many Texan students now grew up hearing the warning story of the Matamoros cult. In Mexico City and Matamoros, the ranch itself became legend, frequently revisited by journalists or amateur explorers looking for remnants. Investigators bulldozed the ritual shack and crucified a cross over its ashes, as if exorcising the land itself. The cult's gruesome saga seeped into pop culture too. Books, documentaries, even a Spanish-language film would later dramatize the Narcosatanists' reign of terror. Yet for those who lived it, the scars never fully healed. The caretaker who aided police and the children who pinched yellow ribbons would forever recall the stench of blood and decay. The surviving cult members would spend their lives behind bars, haunted by the ghost of their charismatic leader and the memories of rituals gone awry. The legend of Santa Elena served as a stark reminder. In the dead of night on a Texas spring break, the ordinary world of college bars collided with an underworld of sacrifice and narcotics. It was a chilling fuse of folklore and drug war reality, an event that would echo in nightmares on both sides of the border for decades. A dreadful example of just how deadly faith and greed could become when they bleed into one another.